Good morning, guys. I had a comment asking me to potentially provide a more thorough walkthrough breakdown of that Electro-Rock track that I showcased for you guys in yesterday's video. And I figured, I don't know, I'm in the mood. Let's do it. I haven't done a lot of these kind of tutorials in a long time, so it's certainly going to be a way for me to kind of dust off my cobwebs and to get used to the idea of showcasing how I do what I do. I feel like I followed most of my own rules in this cue, that there probably might be some places where I didn't. So I'll just be honest about that. If there's certain things that I'm like, probably would have done that differently, I'll just let you guys know. But as my first time back after 2 or 3 years of basically taking a break from producing production music, I'm really happy actually with how this track really turned out. So I'm going to kind of just go through this track part by part, instrument by instrument. And if you guys have any questions about anything that I'm going through, I'm going to keep the chat up here. So feel free to just chime in there, ask me anything, something that's not clear to you, and I'll do my best to try to clear it up for you. But this is just to let you guys know what my, I guess, overall thinking, my attitude, my strategies, my philosophy, like how I'm creating licensable music, and sort of, what I've called the golden rules. That's really what we've taught you guys in Sync Academy for many years now, and just why I do what I do. So hopefully this can be useful for some of you that are maybe potentially interested in this. So what I'm going to do is I'll start off with, well, I'll just go ahead and play a little bit of the intro again so you guys can get familiar with how this track really sounds as we get started, and then I'll maybe break it down by instrument. And some of these, I'm going to have to remember what I was doing, what I was using. This track I produced kind of at the start of this project I was working on, so I'll have to remind myself of what exactly I was doing in some of these. But let's go ahead and just take a listen to what we got going on. I'll stop it right around here. If you guys can let me know how the audio sounds, I'm not using like headphones or anything. I'm just literally trying to use, I'm hearing something kind of, oh, that was just the cymbals. I'm just doing noise canceling on my microphone. So if you hear like slap back or some weird stuff, just let me know in the chat and I'll try to fix that for you guys. But anyways, there's the intro. That's kind of how it starts. Again, my brief for this one was high energy, attention grabbing, sports, rock, intensity. That's really what we were going for with this batch of cues, and this is one of the first ones. This might have been the first one that I put together. So as you probably noticed, we have this kind of interesting lead synth kind of happening in the beginning, and a lot of this stuff you'll hear, actually surprising or not, is coming directly from Logic Pro. So this is just an alchemy patch that I have with an arpeggiated sort of effect on it. So you'll see in the beginning, I basically have this little automated frequency shift to kind of cut out some of the highs and then let those highs come in. So it just sort of creates a cool forward momentum feeling as we just begin the track. The music's a little bit loud, Paul, or am I a little bit loud? Let me know if it's the music. I can turn that down just a little bit. And then I really just let it completely, full-throated come out into the full frequency spectrum when the drums come in after this kind of cool drum fill that we got right here. So, so that's basically what we have going on. And then I bring back in that lead for our choruses. So I'll play like just maybe 4 bars of this chorus leading into the second half. So you'll see that I just kept the same sound palette. Music's just a little bit hot. All right, I'll turn that down a bit. Let me know if this is a little bit better. So I just kept that same sound palette, and I think I readjusted the lead melody just a bit. So here's how that same sound comes in, reintroduced basically with a new chord progression underneath it. Yeah, I can't remember. I think I changed that up. Let me see what I did on this one. Maybe it is the same. it's exactly the same. So I didn't even realize that I had basically copied and pasted that one over. But it does have a different approach and a different feel that we have these different chords going underneath it. So that's kind of a cool little easy way to, basically draw out a little bit more attention and a little bit more, get a little bit more fuel essentially out of your leads without having to rewrite them. Basically, you're just sort of rewriting your chords underneath it, and it now sounds kind of like a whole new vibe. So glad you guys are joining us. Paul, of course, Victor, Crystal Clear Media. I'm glad you guys could join us. Love the synth and the drum sounds. Cool. Yeah, as I'm going through this, guys, if you have any questions, anything that you want to know, I will be happy to share any of my secrets or tips that I possibly can. So that's essentially the lead. Not much going on there. I did add this high lead synth. I don't even remember what it was doing. Let's take a listen to what I did at the last course. As I told you guys, this is one of those golden rules. I always want to add new elements when we reintroduce the same parts over and over again. So there are, I think, there's 2 choruses on this track. And so when we came back and reintroduced it, I didn't want to go right back into the same starting point that we had on the first chorus right here. So I wanted to start our second chorus off with a little bit more going on. And I think I also added like a harmonic or a harmony with the guitars that just added a little bit more beef to what was going on with those kind of rhythm guitars. So I added a few things just to kind of keep the third chorus bigger than the second one, if that makes sense. Yeah, the power of stock plugins. The synth sounds like it came from some expensive. Yeah, I'm telling you guys, Logic has really stepped up their game. If you're not a Logic user, I highly recommend it. Very boring. Nothing much going on there. It's essentially just kind of like a vocal synth patch, probably from Alchemy as well. Yeah. Yeah, string vox there. So anyways, just wanted to add a little kind of like a higher, I didn't want to do a string sound, but I wanted that kind of high pitched intensity kind of coming into that last chorus. So that's why I threw that one on there. All right, so let's go back to, I guess, the drums. Of course, I'm a drummer, so I love talking about drums. Let's go back to the very beginning. We start off with, maybe I'll make this a little bit higher up so we can get a little bit more real estate there. Start off with a fill, and these are the kind of little things that you guys should be definitely incorporating into your tracks. So this is, if you can't tell, this is actually a flam. It's 2 hits, and probably what I should do is probably make that second one a little bit louder. I usually make my second one a little bit louder. Let me go ahead and just solo that out so we only hear the drums. Oh, yeah, I forgot. I have to have all of my drum tracks ready to go. Here we go. So nothing fancy, but just having flams here and there, especially with your fills, gives it the illusion that there was a real drummer performing these, or at least programming them. So if you only go to the sort of standard 4 hits with your snare drum, ta 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 ta, and they're all the same velocity, or even snare tom tom tom, and all of them are the same velocity, and it's very basic and very easy, for lack of a better word, it will start to sound very programmed and robotic, and it will not sound like a live drummer really performed it. So just doing a couple little touches like this, it doesn't take a lot of extra. Basically, if you had your snare hat here, all you do is I could recreate this by just grabbing it and copying it over into the next snare hit, somewhere around there maybe. Let's see, turning up the velocity. It's a little too late there, so I want it a little bit faster. Something like that, right? So it's not, thousands of hours of extra work to do these little tiny moves, but it will make a big difference in your programming and what things sound like. So let's just go ahead and get into this beat so we can hear how it sounds. Crystal Clear is asking, am I using all stock plugins? A lot of them. Some of the guitars are not, and I think I do have some breakbeat loops going on here from Splice. But yeah, most of this stuff, a lot of this stuff is coming from, I know my bass for sure is a, yeah, that's a Logic one as well. I do have a non-Logic. No, actually, I'm using everything Logic with this one. I thought I was using a different plugin, but yeah, all this stuff is Logic. So yeah, you can get some great sounds. Let's go into this drum beat. Probably be helpful if you guys could see what I'm doing there. Sorry about that. Let me go ahead and make that more visible for you guys. Here we go. Yeah, even this one, I would probably do that a little bit better. Probably would have a little bit more variation with our intensity. So maybe I can just do that right now and show you guys how I would have done that a little bit better if I was more careful with it. So with these little fills like that, where you want to like build up the dynamics of your track, you can see that these are kind of all, you know, in the red orange lane in terms of their velocity. So it doesn't feel like we're really going anywhere. It just feels like it's da, 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 da. You know, it sounds like a loud machine gun. Let me play this part again. So these two are probably too loud. I want those to kind of grow a little bit. And these two are probably a little bit loud. Take that one out. And then these ones, I definitely want them to feel like they're growing. So we'll probably take all three of those down. And then maybe take this one down even further. And this one down, maybe down to a yellow. Yeah, and what I can do also is these are all kicks. So maybe what I would do is I like that a little bit better. I think that's why it's a little bit weird. These ones don't need to be that loud. These ones are a little bit louder. There you go. Maybe you can turn these up a little bit. So you can kind of just play around with this as you're doing your drums, but having those just micro amounts of just a performance, right? This is a human, well, we're trying to make it sound like it's a human drummer. So human drummers have some dynamics as they're making a build up in their track. So that feels a little bit more like a real human player for me. So that's probably what I should have done. So I got a little bit lazy on that part. Anyways, we can go back into, let's go into maybe the drums here where we start kicking in. We have some breakbeat loops that I basically found that match the BPM. So this is a pretty simple, easy, fast way to just kind of throw in more of that electro-rock feel into my tracks. So I'll play one bar before hat, and then when the two loops come in, you can see what they do to it. And then I just basically cut it out there so we have that nice clean. I do that a lot, like if I have some loops or I have some sort of a drum pattern that's going on top of my main drums, but I want to really emphasize that we're doing a build-up. I want these things to get out of the way because they're kind of carrying a beat, you know? And it's cool, it sounds great, but when we have a build-up, I want those to take a break. It's like less is more. I want these drums, these toms to really sing and provide most of the forward momentum right there, so we have a little bit of a break from them. So anyways, so those are just kind of regular, I'm pretty sure I got those from Splice. They just sort of match the BPM, they match the feel for this track. So it helps also add, as you'll see, you know, the first half we just have the drums carrying the rhythm of the track. Then they come in on the second half, and that's intentional because obviously with production music, you usually want to build your track and have forward momentum, which usually means you add to what you've already been creating. Not necessarily just swapping out and starting a whole new idea every 4 bars, but developing an idea and then building up on top of that idea. I talk about in terms of it being like Lego. So you just had one layer, you build up a second layer, a third layer, all that kind of stuff. So that's what we got going on there. The verse drums are a little bit more double time, so we can take a listen to those real quick. And then you can kind of hear that cool loop going on out there. That really sells this verse. And I put some EQing on there. I really wanted to hollow out the low end and the high end because without these, I think it doesn't have a lot of low end. But I just felt like it felt better to give the drums more of the full spectrum and let these be sort of like I'm treating them kind of like a percussive sort of loop that goes on top of those drums right there. So anyways, we're getting ahead of ourselves there. So let's go back to the guitars, because guitars are certainly what's driving most of this track, it being a primarily electro-rock track. So we have some stuttered guitars here in the beginning. I think I just sort of bounced out a chord or a note and just stuttered them up. Let me go get a little bit closer to this. Yeah, looks like that's what I did. I think I put a little bit of a automated curve on that as well. Yep. Looks like we have 2 of them. Let me make this a little bit bigger for us. Here we go. Sorry guys, as I told you, I'm a bit rusty on this right now. So here's the little curve. It kind of goes in at the end there, cutting out some of the low frequencies, and then this one, some of the high frequencies. So it's just a small little move there to basically let some of the energy move forward. Then we've got, let's see what we got going on here. Reverse chords, what was this one? Yeah, that was definitely just a single note that I had basically hit on my guitars, which I'll show you what plugin I'm using in a second. And then literally just went to File and what did I do? Function? Yeah, Function and just reverse right here. So it's a real easy trick that almost every rock producer, it's kind of like the first thing you go to when you have transitions or you want to really hype up an intro or something like that. In fact, I probably would turn up that stutter guitar just a little bit more. It doesn't feel like it's... So anyways, there's what we're doing there. All right, let's get into these guitars. Let's see what I'm using. So this is a new-ish plugin that I had found called Axe Machina, or Machina, however you pronounce it. And I love it. It sounds really good. It's basically just for metal, though. So it's not one of these like versatile plugins where you can use it for various styles of music. It's basically just for heavy, intense rock music, but I love the chord sound of it. I love the single sound of it, the single notes, that kind of thing. It's just got a great, just great quality to it. So that's that low note kind of driving it here. Here's the chords. So what you'll notice though is there's only single MIDI notes that are playing full chords, and that was what was pretty appealing to me about that particular plugin, is because I didn't have to go, you know, stack up an entire chord to get a chord sound. I love that I could just literally, you know, I'm a lazy producer. I want to just hit one button and get a full guitar chord coming out. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, I'm sold. I'm going to give this thing a shot. So anyways, put those together and they sound like this. That one I made a little faux pas, probably would connect that a little bit. I could hear that little gap right there. Probably did it on that one too, so. And there too, you can hear it. Wow, pretty sloppy on this one, so I'll get it back. All right, and then the bass, pretty simple bass, is essentially following exactly what the guitar chords are doing. And again, this one was just the built-in picked rock bass, one of the basic bass patches you can get with Logic. And then I did add this synth bass to add a little bit more depth to it as we built up this intro. And then, of course, when we had our more electro-rock double-time verse, I wanted that synth bass to kind of drive the energy there. So in this section, I guess I'm sort of treating this more like it's kind of a lead, a rhythmic instrumental lead, even though it is now on the bass track. And then when we get into our verse, it really goes down into that proper range, and it's now really driving the bass of the track. Oops, here we go. And I forgot that I automated the hell out of this thing. So there's this cool, see if we can see it in real time as it's doing it. Yeah, if you look at right here, this cutoff one, you can see it's starting to automate as I progressed on this verse part. So I just like the way that kind of added a little bit of a movement to that section. And what else is going on there? That's pretty much it. I have a couple of these other guitars, but I think I was basically just bouncing out some stuff that just didn't feel right through the VST. So I just performed it and then bounced it and put it on its own track there. So I think that's why those are on their own track. We had a little lead in the first verse. So we just kind of threw on harmony section there. And then you can see here I added a little bit of a lift there with the pitch wheel there, just to give a little bit of a fun ending to that. So little movements like that just kind of help make it feel, again, more human. So you're the guitarist for that chorus section. Oop, heard a little bit of a hiccup right there. So this is kind of fun. I get to hear all my errors. Thought I heard one. Wow, I swore I heard a... Okay, don't even know what I was hearing there. So on that second half, you'll hear that I'm adding this kind of harmonic lead. So anyways, just adds a little bit of more of that momentum and that interest since we're obviously repeating the first half of the chorus, but we got to change things up for that second half. And not only that, we added the synth lead as well when that came back in. This one, probably just a percussive shaker. Yeah. Very, very basic shaker. And these ones down here are just basically swells and drops and impacts. This is a white noise crash here. So I throw these a lot on the beginning of my choruses. Oops. Just adding that kind of shine, like listen to that start without it. It's not bad. But to me, a lot of times these white noise crashes and impacts really do add a lot of just shine and sparkle, especially to parts that you really want to shine and explode out of all this tension that we were building up here. Let's see. Thank you, Snacks. Appreciate it. Glad to be back making more music. Crystal clear. Are you using quantizing? If so, what's the setting? Yes. In this track, I think I was probably just using 100% on everything. Yeah, you can see even right here, it's strength, 100%, 16th notes. So these ones are just straight up right on the grid. I am definitely experimenting and getting more comfortable with taking this down to around 70. In fact, some of our AI Proofing Your Music series in Sync Academy now is focused highly on getting away from the 100% quantizing, because some producers and some people who have maybe some drum backgrounds can probably get away with that because they know how to program them even if they're 100% locked to the grid. But people that don't necessarily have that background are probably using that thinking that it's making it more on the grid, which it is, but it also is taking away from the enjoyability of the track because it's now starting to feel much more like a drum machine. So we actually have some tutorials dedicated to how to kind of play with that, and I show you guys in those tutorials where I'm going, how I'm doing it, and most importantly how I'm programming my drums, because it really comes down to programming. That's really what makes the big difference there. Quantizing, of course, is very, very important, but if you don't really know or have an idea on how to program drums to make them feel like believable, realistic, grooving, like that you'd want to groove along to them, quantizing is like the last of your concerns, because you can quantize a terrible programmed drum thing and it'll be on the grid, but it will not be enjoyable. It certainly won't be licensable. So just kind of understanding how to program drums is probably the better place to start with that kind of stuff. Then after our first chorus, we go to this kind of almost like a revisit of the intro kind of hyped up thing, but it doesn't have the leads. So it's, again, different. It's something you haven't heard before. So if they wanted, a client that I was going to get a placement with wanted a very short version of it without all the noise on the top, they could have this section here. What's up, Six Guitar? Glad to see you as well. Glad you got to join us today. Anyways, now we're going into our second verse, and of course our drums are going to be different, right? As I tell you guys, when you're going to repeat that verse or repeat that chorus, switch something up. So the first verse, we had our sort of traditional hi-hat and kick snare pattern like this. Right, and then our second verse, we're going to go into the toms. And it's a much shorter verse. It's only half as long as the first one. And a little fill there at the end. So I'll maybe pull that up so you guys can see what I'm doing. So little stops like that. I don't remember what I did on the first one. Yeah, see, I didn't do the stop on the first one. I added an extra bar before we went into the chorus. This time, I cut off all the drums and the music just slightly before we hit that second chorus. So just a little bit of variation there, and then I think I added this stuttering guitar. Let's take a listen to this one. Yeah. And normally what I would have done is bounce that down, chop it up in audio format, and then put that on its own audio track. But I like the way that the MIDI keyboard was performing with that as I put that together. And I was like, I'm not going to bounce that down. I'm just going to keep it as is. I just like the way that it was working there with the track, so I just kept it. And then we go into our last and final chorus here. Oh, drum plugin. Thank you so much. I didn't even tell you guys. I'm using Steven Slate. You can almost assume if you ever hear a track from me and I'm making live rock drums or any live drums, it's going to be Steven Slate. I'm a huge fan. Been using them for at least, I'm at least 10, maybe even my entire, it was early on in my career that I started getting into Steven Slate drums. So 2010 maybe, I don't know, it was really, really far back. So Steven Slate, high quality, highly interested, or highly recommended. I don't get paid to recommend him or his services, but he makes cream of the crop stuff, and it's easy to use, it's easy to put together. I just love it. So if you need live drums, I think Steven Slate is the best game in town for now. Yeah, so on this chorus, we started it off adding that next, we added this harmony guitar part that just sort of counterbalances the main chord. So the main chords, what you heard on the first chorus was like this. So I wanted to make sure that when you hear that second chorus, it's a little different, it's a little more enhanced, it just moved differently than the first one. So here's what I added. So just adding a little bit of extra movement there. We've got some percussion that's coming in. Of course, we got our leads, but you heard that on the first one, and that's why I thought, the second half, it's a little different, but I wanted even more, so I put this high synth in there, which I'm not really hearing that well right now because my speakers are pretty low. I don't want it to bleed into my mic, so I might actually want to turn that up a bit more to make it more prominent. And then we just end with basically the sort of exact type of hyped up intro that we did in the beginning, but we changed a few things around. I mean, obviously, we now have a stinger ending, which is not what you heard in the beginning. These are these little movements and these little changes and stinger endings that you really want to take an extra, literally 10% of your time to do. So this wasn't something that you can just, a lot of producers, I hear it often, is they'll get to the end of the track and they'll just go, da, da, bam. It's just like on the downbeat, it's on the root chord, it's got a hit, it's got an impact. It's like, well, there's my button ending, I'm done. Yes, you technically can be done with your track at that point, but if you can just take an extra few minutes to craft out a really interesting and really impactful ending to your track with these kind of stinging hit endings like this, I think that your chances of getting more placements just exponentially goes up, because a lot of times you might not get a full placement, you might not get the full 30 seconds or a minute-long placement or 2 or 3 minutes, but stingers are used all the time in our industry, going in and out of commercials, in and out of video games, sports games, and that's exactly what I know this is going to go for. So if I'm not taking the extra few minutes to create this sting ending, I'm really like wasting a lot of my time, because this is one of those things that when I deliver these to my library partner, they're going to say, give us the sting version. And if I don't have something really interesting, like I can even see myself creating a sting version. Let's see where I would create it. Yeah, so I could either just put it right here, or I could even include this hit. And that just adds so much more licensability to your track. So just crafting things up, cutting things up, and making sure that you add a little bit more of that final, exclamation mark. That's what I call it. It's an exclamation mark rather than just a period, just it's done. Exclamation mark. Make sure that people heard that your track really, really was ending there. So that's kind of a cool thing. I think the only thing you hear mostly differently on this, of course, with this different ending, is we had this high synth that just adds that kind of nice ringing out sound at the very top. And that's it, guys. I won't get so much into mixing, mastering, because that can take a whole other tutorial up, and I think this is all I have in me for today. But if you guys had any other questions about this track or what I'm using or what I'm doing or something about that, I'll hang out for just a few more minutes if you guys want to pop those into the chat. I would be happy to help you. But just remember, if your tracks don't sound as polished and ready as this, that's okay. I didn't start off here. In fact, that's what I should do one of these days, is put out a video saying and showing you guys what my first production music library tracks were. They were not even close to anything that sounds like this. So we all start with what we got, with your talents, with your skills, with your plugins, with your sounds. It's not all about buying a whole bunch of plugins and a whole bunch of sounds, but it definitely makes a difference to have high quality sounds that you're working with. So luckily these days, like I said, with Logic Pro, it's $200. You can have access to essentially what your anything you want, so when it comes to strings, guitars, drums, literally even their plug-in drums. I'm not using their drums, but I could use their drums easily. I think the drums that they got here rival some of the best. Even they rival Steven Slate in some ways. So I don't think that there's anything really in Logic that you would go, I would never use that. Almost everything in here probably could have a really useful professional place in our industry. Eric was asking about the guitar plugin. Yes, I briefly showed that, but I'll show it again here. It was called Ax Machina. You can see it right there. And there's a couple of settings. It's basically just for rock and metal, as I said before, though. It's not a diverse, versatile plugin that you can use for multiple genres. It's pretty much just one style, and you can do different. I think they have, the single, they have, as you can see right here, they have pick sustains, power chords, they have the palm mute, harmonics, and pinch harmonics. So they got a couple of settings basically, and you can obviously pan things out. You got 2 guitars as a double guitar, so you can kind of get that kind of nice big stereo sound out of one guitar track. So that's nice. I still always double up my guitars, as you heard here. I have my single notes, and then I got my chords here. So yeah, that's what I use for the guitars. I am still a big fan of Odin. If you guys are familiar with Odin, it's a really great plugin as well. But I just was searching around as I was getting back into music. I'm wondering, has there been some new plugins or some new releases that I should be aware of? And that was the one that really caught my attention for its sonic quality and how easy it was to use. So I was like, all right, I'm buying that one. So All right, you're welcome, Trevor. Glad that, or Trev, glad that this was helpful for you. Jonathan, hey, you got your first exclusive library contract through Sync Connect, man. That's awesome. Congrats. Obviously, I was there. Really, really excited to see that happen for you, man. Really, really cool. Obviously, you did the work. You obviously invested and you put in the time. So, kudos to you, and make sure you do give yourself a nice treat, whatever that's going to be. A donut, cupcake, cup of coffee, whatever it is that floats your boat. Give it to yourself. Joris, you're welcome. Glad this helped. I love how every section sounds so different. It repeats some elements, but it never sounds like a looped, boring track. Yeah. Thank you, Natuno. I appreciate that. That's basically what you learn in this industry when you do this over and over and over. Your brain, in the beginning, like I tell you guys, follow reference tracks. Definitely always follow those reference tracks, because that's how you'll learn like how to implant some of these lessons sort of second natured into your brain. So in the beginning, I remember listening to Linkin Park over and over again, even though that's not production music for TV film. The library owner that I first sort of studied under and got me my first couple of contracts and deals, he was like, listen to how many layers of instruments are in a Linkin Park song. You probably thought it's just a drummer, guitar player, bassist, and a vocalist, right? Go listen to it again. And I remember just putting headphones on and just repeat. And I would write down, I'm like, man, there's like a shaker here. There's a weird siren over there. There's like a stuttering guitar happening there. And all these little elements of ear candy kind of stacked up in my head. And I was like, wow, now that this next verse came in, it's different than the first one. It's not the exact same copy and paste job that the first one was. There's a new lead. There's a new drum pattern. Something with the vocals is different. I don't know. And so the more that I studied that, and then the more that I got into the production music world, I realized that like these are the sort of golden rules that we start to kind of emulate as we create our tracks. So I appreciate that. You're definitely hearing, I think, about, what am I at? I don't know. I mean, I took a couple of years off. Let's call it 12 years or so. 12 years that I've been creating production music for the TV film world. And that's exactly the balance that you want to have, where it feels like it's congruent, it feels like it's cohesive, and it's I'm blanking on the exact word I want here. It feels like it's moving along and it's staying consistent throughout. Consistent is probably the word, but it changes and develops and moves enough so you could sit there and listen to it for the entire, I don't know how long this track is. Let's see. About 2 minutes. So you can sit there and listen to it for about 2 minutes and not feel like you've heard it, or that it's looped, or that it's not bringing you anywhere. So even though our music is background music, it always sits on the background of, TV shows, films, commercials, that kind of thing, for the most part, not always. It still needs to move forward, right? So if there's a scene or somebody talking or a dialogue or a voiceover or something like that, our music still needs to be carrying the interest and the emotion and the vibe, or whatever you want to call it, forward. If it starts to feel like it's really static and stuck and loopy, you'll just feel bored with the commercial or with the scene or with whatever's going on. It'll just happen. So yeah, it's a tricky balance. We do give a lot of feedback in our pro feedback service to try to help you guys understand that it's one of the things where it's like the only way that we could probably really help you is if we hear your tracks and tell you where things are getting loopy and where things are feeling like they're moving forward. Because, I can show you my tracks like this. I can walk you through my philosophy, but, many of you don't have 12 years, in your back pocket that you've been doing this. So I wouldn't expect you to really necessarily just, always have these kind of choices in your back pocket that you would just naturally make. A lot of times producers that come to, our website, Sync Academy Pro Feedback, or even just my YouTube channel, you guys have come from different backgrounds, right? Some of you are beat makers, so you've had this whole history of just copy paste. You've got your great 4 bars, copy paste that 4 times, that's your verse. All right, make your hook, cool, add that new element, and then just literally copy paste the entire verse chorus section, and now you got a full track. Doesn't cut it for this side of the industry, right? You have to get a little bit more mindful with how you're crafting it. Some of you have been writing pop songs and singer-songwriter songs and just artist tracks generally for the general audience. And I'm going to make my monitor or my camera just a little bit bigger here since we're kind of done with the track. And some of you guys are coming from that background. And the problem with that can be sometimes for some of you, not from all of you, but from some of you, the problem with that can be that, why do I look super blue? I think that's because my light is probably way too bright back there or something. But the problem with that is that you're coming from a place where you're writing very specific lyrics and music for yourself to express yourself, right? Which is very important. There needs to be some self-expression in what we do. But there's a large part of what we do which you need to get out of your own way, and you need to really just listen to the client and listen to the brief and listen to whoever's offering you an opportunity and think, how can I apply my songwriting skills, my lyric skills, my writing skills, producing skills to match what they want, right? And that's the really tricky part, because not every producer has that ability to be able to shut off the kind of, the ego knob is kind of what I call it. You have to turn down that ego knob down to like a 2 or a 1 and say, all right, it's not about me. It's about the opportunity. It's about the client. It's about what's going on. It's about their show or their commercial. Even if we think sometimes these projects are not that exciting or interesting, or it's not something that would ever appeal to us, we wouldn't be a customer of it, or we wouldn't be a viewer of it. The person creating this content is very, very invested in it. They really care about it. They really want to make sure that it comes out well and strong. So if we're not giving that kind of consideration and attention to their project and really making sure we are supplying them with the highest quality music we possibly can to really serve their needs, you're going to be stacking your odds against yourself. That's all I can say. You are really going to be shooting yourself in the foot in this business and then wondering, why can't I get ahead? Why don't I get the opportunities? Why don't people send me briefs? Why don't I get blah, 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 blah. So it's kind of a practice in turning down the ego, learning and realizing that you need to learn. You need to kind of go to the basics of music creation, especially learning that production music is just a whole different animal than anything else. Not to knock anything, of course. I'm a fan of tons of artists, tons of people. I want that music to continue. There's some amazing beat makers out there that make great stuff, and there's definitely a place and a time for them to put that stuff out there. But I think, unfortunately, the misconception is that we can just sort of shoehorn in our other music into the production music world and think that, well, I'm not making any money with it over here, so I'll just throw it into a library and maybe somebody will like it. I hope so. That would be great. But chances are, if you're not taking it seriously in terms of getting yourself educated on how to do it the right way, your tracks will just kind of sit there. They might not be collecting dust on your shelf anymore, but they might be collecting dust on a library shelf, which is definitely a very common thing in our industry, unfortunately. John, welcome. Justin, do you think there's a place for hard rock track like this mixed with an orchestra? Absolutely. The more, in fact, Justin, the more that you can get into hybridizing, you guys look that up. Let me know which word I got right. The more that you can incorporate other styles of music into your style of music, the better. Okay. I've talked about, again, it's always going to come back to the AI stuff. I have heard a lot of the AI music coming out, and one thing that it really struggles with is hybrid music. So combining rock with orchestral stuff, EDM with orchestral stuff. Absolutely. So if you can do something like that, Justin, this is an Electro-Rock cue, so you could definitely go in that direction if you want to. But even if you did indie rock that's one thing I don't know if I've heard ever. Maybe I've never heard that before, like indie rock with some orchestral elements on top, or punk rock, right? Pop punk, which is obviously coming back now. Some of those old pop punk bands from the mid 2000s are coming back and getting back together and releasing new stuff. You take that style of music, you throw some orchestral elements on top, because remember, what you'll do with every library you work with is you'll always give them alt versions of your full track. So you'll give them the full track with your orchestral elements, but they're going to want the alt mix that has all of those muted. So now it's just a pop punk track. So you basically are giving them kind of like 2 different tracks in one. So twice the amount of potential placements for half of the essentially effort that you have to put into it. So that's the beauty of hybrid tracks. It's so funny that like this is now becoming more of the focus for us, because if you guys, I don't know how many of you guys, how many of you guys have been following me since I started my YouTube channel in 2016? Probably more like 2017 is when I kind of started consistently uploading, but I'm curious if any of you guys go back that far. But back then, one of the first things I remember I started really pounding the pavement with and hammering away with for you guys is saying hybrid tracks, hybrid tracks, hybrid tracks. It was like the first thing that I ever sort of started talking about. And even back then, I saw that was like a tricky thing for producers to handle, but I saw that they could really secure some big placements, some amazing prominent placements, because it was kind of a cool, unique, interesting, creative way to create production music. And it was just so rare because most people cannot do it properly. They kind of just jam a lot of stuff together and it ends up sounding just really, really messy and noisy. So it's basically, I think, one of the best ways you can stand out, especially now with the AI music kind of coming on board. It'll help you even more. So yes, Justin, you're in the right path. For all the rest of you guys that are watching, whatever style of music you do, think about what's one other genre that you can incorporate into it fairly easily. Okay, so if it's rock, maybe it's orchestral elements. Maybe if you're doing rock, can you incorporate world elements, right? Could you do like a Middle Eastern approach? Can you do South American? Can you do Asian? There's so many cool ideas. I think right now is not the time to go for the safe placements, the safe kind of genres are like, well, I know this gets placed all the time, so I'll just do the tried and true sort of straight down the middle EDM music, right? Right now, I think the best thing to do is to start to really carve out a niche for yourself and become a very creative and unique individual in our space. That is going to be more and more relevant, important, and probably necessary to stay relevant in our industry as AI music starts to just flood the world with very generic, boring, tried and done kind of styles of music. So this is a time for us to kind of become more unique, stand out, combine new genres. I think in some ways also we want to start thinking about how can we create more emotional impact with less. So how can you create like way more emotional impact with your music by only using 3 instruments or 2 instruments, maybe just guitar and vocals, maybe just piano and vocals. Like how can you get something that's just like really, really pulling out some amazing, intense emotion without having to rely on a big production to be able to do it. So I think that's the move. I don't know, that's basically where I'm kind of looking at right now in terms of where I'm trying to steer you guys for how to make sure that you stand out and not always thinking like bigger is better and more and more and more, but really thinking about scaling down your productions in some ways and just being more thoughtful in your writing. And that's also why I'm no longer going to be recommending that we sort of just keep playing the numbers game where it's like, we'll just crank out a couple of tracks, more tracks, more tracks, more tracks, put them out there. I think that was a play for a while, but now what I'm thinking the play needs to be, what we need to focus on is quality, much more than quantity. We still need to be consistent. It doesn't mean that you can, work for 2 months and then just go quiet. But you don't need to focus so much on doing 2 or 3 tracks a week, which is basically what I've been recommending for many years on my YouTube channel and in Sync Academy. I think we can go down to like 1 or 2 tracks a week, but those better be some of the best damn tracks you've ever put out and that people have ever heard. So that means a little bit of extra effort. So some of the stuff I was showing you guys in today's tutorial, just drum fills and transitions, the stinger endings, adding some harmonies, adding some new variations, right? Little things like that. It doesn't take a lot extra, but it definitely does help you stand out and not sound like you have just kind of like generic copied and pasted production music. That stuff is just not going to be as relevant moving into the future. So all right, guys, I'm going to head off. I got some emails to answer, some sort of housekeeping to do here at the office. Thank you so much for tuning in, you 30 that are still sticking with me. I really appreciate it. If you guys wouldn't mind, leave me a like before we end this. That would really, really help me out. I do appreciate that. And if you have any other questions about what I've done here, maybe you're watching this after I've gone live, post it as a comment below. I'll be happy to answer in any way I possibly can. And hope you guys found this helpful in some way, one way or another. So you guys have a fantastic rest of your day and go get busy making your own production music starting right now.